we've got a super special guest on. Her name is Mel Kaspin Blume. She's the former head of copy at Disney Consumer Products, where she created in-depth storytelling copy for products and from Disney, Pixar, Lucasfilm, and Marvel. I can't believe you've done Marvel, Mel. We have to talk about that. I can't believe you've done Marvel. And more interestingly, Mel, 2 years ago, set up a business. She left Disney to set up her own business called Once Upon a Bloom, which is a one-person branding and copywriting agency that specializes in the art of storytelling. She has written for a range of companies, including The Forbes and Condé Nast. She now lives in Los Angeles with her beautiful family. And she also spends a lot of time talking to her family on the East Coast. We have Mel Kaspin Blume. Hi, Mel.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for being with us. Thank you for being with us. How's it going at the moment out there in Los Angeles? The last time I read, you guys were like going back into like a mini lockdown. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, you just had an earthquake, right? Did you not
last
just
night?
have an earthquake?
Well, yeah, this morning at 4:30 in the morning. Yes.
Wow.
So we've been really busy.
Yeah. I bet you have.
Yeah.
I bet you have. How was the earthquake?
I think it was 4.5, but the house definitely shook. And my 3-year-old came in. He's like, "Hey, Mom, my room just moved." We're like, yeah.
Oh, bless him. So, you know, with the earthquakes, I know it's something that's quite common in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
Is it something that happens on a yearly basis? So are you kind of like used to it at this point?
We are, although I certainly remember my first earthquake here, but
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of oddly get used to it.
Yeah. So how was that experience? Your first time?
I was in a building. I was on like I think the 8th floor of like a 25-floor building in Century City, and it's on wheels, so it actually like moves, and it moved for like 30 seconds. So you just like sat at your desk and just moved. And it was the weirdest. Like I was frozen for 3 hours. Like I could not get up. And then all of these California natives who I worked with were like totally fine, moving on with their day. And I would not leave my desk. So yeah, that was the first experience.
Oh, wow. So you literally grabbed onto your desk and you thought, okay, I'm just going to stay stuck.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And what about with the lockdown? How have you been dealing with the lockdown? I mean, especially with 2 little children. How has that been?
There's a lot of working at night, and my house turned into a classroom. So that, and I mean, luckily we have an outside area to play in, which I'm so grateful for. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet it is. I've been reading online a lot of parents just saying that they're not very good teachers and they really can't wait for their children to just go back to school.
Yeah, it's such a strange time. It's like we found out last Monday that LAUSD schools are going to be closed, the Los Angeles public schools, and it was this feeling like you don't want your kids to go back, but then you're like, okay, somehow this has to work for 6 more months at least. So it's anxiety that, it's just.
Bless you, Mel. You've got this. Every time I speak to a parent, I keep telling them like, you've got this. You know, soon it will be over. You've got this.
It's nice to hear. It's lovely to hear that. So thank you.
So Mel, storytelling.
Yeah.
Just the storytelling. How does Mel get into storytelling? How did it all start?
Yeah. So I've been writing since I was a kid. Even my 2nd grade teacher, my mom found like an essay I wrote in 2nd grade that said, "I think you're going to be a writer when you grow up." I've been writing and journaling since I was as long as I can remember, and I've always had a journal. And then I ended up in college going to business school and taking the marketing route. And then I went into the corporate fashion route, and it was all numbers and finance and just a part of my brain that I don't have a relationship with. So I just started writing when I came out to LA. I came out at 23, and I just started writing a daily blog, and I had 1,000 jobs, and all of them gave me such good stories to just write into a blog. Yeah. So I started a blog, and then I used that as my portfolio to submit to different companies. And then I started to become a featured fashion contributor for Yahoo and The Examiner. Mm-hmm. And then somebody started becoming a regular reader of mine at Guess. The corporate headquarters are in Los Angeles, and they pulled me in for an interview for a copywriting position. So that's started my career in copywriting. I was there for about 2 years, where I developed the brand voices for G by Guess and Guess Kids while working on the other brands. And then there was an opening at Disney. And so I got that about 2 years later. And then my boss there ended up leaving after 8 months. So I kind of like slid into his role, and I managed a group of writers. There were like around 5 to 7 writers, most talented people on the planet. I still love them and talk to them. And I was there for 5.5 years. And then 2 years ago, I started my own company.
Very nice. So Mel, when you say, for those of, for the people that listen that don't know, what exactly is copywriting?
Yeah, so copywriting is the sales writing you read in ads, online, in your emails, anything that's basically like selling you something. And it could be copy for anything, for a product, for a service, for an idea. Like there's someone behind the words that are selling this to you. Yes. And those are copywriters.
Okay. And even, you know, with the writing that you do, so you started with Guess. Really? So Guess was like the major breakthrough, the first major breakthrough that you had.
Yes.
What was you writing about? And was it something that was coming from an inspirational place?
I think I'll say yes, because I love fashion. So for me, yes. I don't know if it would be that way for everybody, but I happen to love fashion. So it was great because I also at the time had a baby niece, and I was writing for Guess Kids, so a lot of baby clothes. So it was cool just to like develop a voice and think about the target audience and these moms who are reading it, who had babies for the first time, and you know, you're selling them the clothes. So that was cool. So there I was writing all the emails, all the website copy. When you walk into a Guess store, like whatever you see written on the walls or in the windows. Basically it's everything on the website and store.
Yes. Okay. So it's interesting that you didn't go to university and do literature, you didn't do poetry, you didn't do any of that, but no. Fast forward, you did end up working for huge corporations. So ultimately the business that you did a bit of really at school, would you say that assisted you a bit throughout your career, or do you think it didn't have anything to do with it at all?
I think a marketing degree like helped, because I did understand like the analytics behind what I'm doing, like studying the target markets and the message. But I think that I think that's a small percentage, because I do think that you can teach yourself a lot of what I learned in 4 years at school. So I think so much of it, especially now, what's available online, you can basically get anything. Yeah. And you can teach yourself anything. So I think a lot of it is like inside of you. Like if you have that writing gene inside of you, I think you can absolutely teach yourself the rest.
Mm-hmm. So just going back to the writing a bit more, because I'm really interested in it. So personally, I'm more of a literature person. So I've always been crap at maths. Mel, it's just horrific. Me with numbers has just genuinely been so horrific. I'm just, yeah, I prefer literature. You know, I understand it, I can read it, I'm fine with it. And with literature, it's something that a lot of the times when I feel things, very often I'm unable to vocalize it, especially if I'm very emotional. So naturally, if I get really upset, I will get emotional. So I don't particularly want to talk whilst I'm emotional. So more often, 9 times out of 10, I will start writing in my phone on my notes. And with that, I literally feel like Shakespeare whenever I do that, just to put it out there. I just write and write and write. And I feel my soul just feeling, just easing, literally this weight being lifted off of me. So anyone that does write professionally, I'm always really intrigued to know, what is it that you tap into for you to be able to focus and write the things that you do?
It's a great question. Um, I think a lot of it is practice. Like I do think in the beginning, things took so long. Like one email to write for a company could take a week, because you're rewriting and rewriting and rewriting, and that's not good enough. That's like, and then all of a sudden you find yourself writing 9 emails in one day.
Yeah.
So I think it's like just like practice, and like you get to that point that you recognize in your head, this like fully focused like spot that you just get to know so well because it's on repeat in your head and it's on a daily basis. So I do think that it's something like there's like a muscle in your brain that like you just like start to get to know and work out a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's just practicing and getting to know that part of your brain.
Yes.
Really.
So you said you started writing since you were a kid, right? You've been doing this really since you were a kid. Do you find that when you started doing it as a kid, was it an escape from something? Like, was it just something you enjoyed doing? Like, because not many kids just want to write. So can you remember by any chance, what was it that made you want to stick to it as a kid?
Yeah, I think so being a storyteller, like there are always these like characters and storylines and like things like that randomly pop up in your head when you're like doing something. Like I don't even know, like I could be like outside scooting with my kids and I'm like, oh my God. And there's this character that like fully comes to life. And I'm just like, I just have to stop and like do a quick draft of the character that's like fully coming to life. And I think that started when I was little. And I went to like playwright school in 9th grade because it was just like it became this like amazing thing. And I'll never forget when I started to learn how to type. Yeah. Like all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I could just like type it all up. And it was always just like really exciting to me, like get these characters out, get these storylines out. And I think it's just always there.
Yes. And with the characters, with the characters that you were creating back then, and are you still creating characters now? Yes?
Yeah.
Are you able to talk about that? What type of characters does Mel create?
Yeah. So right now my focus is children's stories. That's definitely, I think it's just through during parenting, there are all these roadblocks I'm hitting. And when I hit a roadblock, I'm like, okay, I need a story to get me through that. And like, I'll think of a story that I can tell the kids to like help us address an issue or something, whatever it is. So I think a lot of it right now is like, I'm trying to build like a library of my own stories for them. So I have a lot of different characters. Some are in fanciful worlds, some are in real worlds. They're all are like in the, I'd say 7 to 11 range age-wise. But yeah, I mean, I've created different lands. There's right now I'm working on I have 4 stories. And 2 of them are being ready to pitch. So yeah, they're all different, but it's definitely the children's realm. And then I have like an adult. I do have one story that I'm working on for adults, but I kind of put that to the side right now because I'm so focused on the others.
Mm-hmm. So at the moment, you're focused more on the children's side of it instead of the adult side. And you've mentioned, I guess that has a lot to do with the parenting. So
Yeah.
did that start when you became a mother, or was it an area that you were always particularly interested in?
I think it was when I became a mom, because I was way more interested in my adult story, which I have like 80 pages written in Microsoft Word, and I have 10 million drafts of it. And then all of a sudden, when I started, I guess when my daughter became like 3, I'm like, ooh, how do I explain this? Or how do I, and now, I mean, there's so many things to explain to kids in this world we're now in, that's constantly evolving. So yeah, I'm definitely just more focused on that. And I think it's just helping parenting.
What type of characters would you say they are? Are they inspirational? I guess it's fictional. Would you say it's fictional, or do you ever base any of your characters on your life experiences or other people's?
Yes, they are 100% based on my experiences in life.
Okay.
Um, some of them are exaggerated for
Yeah.
storyline, creative, entertainment purposes, but
Yes.
yeah, they're definitely drawn from real life.
Okay. Okay. What about Marvel? Mel, I love Marvel. I wouldn't say I'm Marvel's biggest fan. I'm definitely not the biggest fan because I couldn't tell you like all their films. I couldn't do that. But I love Marvel and just I love creatives. Can I just start there? I love creatives, Mel, because I feel like certain people, certain talents that they have, it's just God given. It's just there. And when I look at a Marvel, for example, it's not just the character, the film, for example, the way they're able to think of every single detail and bring it all together, the sounds, the movements, the costumes, the writing, the directing, the producing, to me, I'm in awe of it. I'm in awe. It doesn't see, I just ask myself, how can humans sit down, Mel, and just really think, yeah, this is what we're going to do. Like Doctor Strange, for example, I was watching Doctor Strange during lockdown, and it was actually my first time watching it. I hadn't watched it, and I fell in love with Doctor Strange. All of that animation, Mel, I just think, what goes through your mind? I would love to just live in your mind, even if just for 2 hours. How was it working for Marvel? And were you able to get in on any creativity that you wanted to get into, or was it more focused on copywriting, etc.?
Yeah, no, I'd say so for Marvel, it was just under the Disney Consumer Products like wing. So it was anytime a film was released, we were responsible for producing the copy to sell the product. So I wasn't like part of the creative for them, although we had to submit everything to them for approvals and stuff like that, but we were part of their team. I'd see the only team outside of Disney I could actually speak to was Lucas, because I helped them launch a website. They created, are you a Star Wars fan?
Stuff? No, I'm not, but I know of it. I'm not. It's a bit too
Okay.
long for me, but
Okay.
nevertheless, very creative.
Yes. So their team, they produced 3D replicas of weapons that were used in the films. And so I helped them launch a website for that. And I could say that team just like blew me away with just like their everything. They were so unbelievably creative and amazing. But I can't really speak to the Marvel team because I didn't work that closely with them.
No, of course. Once upon a bloom. What does that mean?
So storytelling is basically like what I do. And my last name's Bloom. So it just kind of like fit one day. So the once upon a time. And that is like what at the heart of what I do. So right now when I work with different companies, a lot of times we start with like who they are, because even if they're a company that's been around for 10 years or a startup, like sometimes we have the same exact conversation. And it's like, what's the heart of your company? Like, why did you start this? Like, and I have a whole interview process to get down into like the origin of it. And once I find out like the heart and soul of the company, then I can produce like a brand voice that aligns with it and their target market, their message, their core, like all of it has to like align. And then typically I produce a brand voice Bible for them. so that at every outlet, it's like one cohesive voice. So whether they're on social media, it's their website, it's an email, it's in store, like whatever it is, it all makes sense to the consumer. So that's pretty much what I start. And it always starts with a story. It's always like, what's your story? And then we start with like the about page. And then like we usually like build the voice out from there.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, with the story, for example, it always starts with the story for you. I guess, would you say that's where you find the human connection in order to do what you do?
100%. And that's actually how I say, like, if we're gonna like take your company and like personify it, like who is that? Like, and basically I have to see a person to like start developing it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's spot on.
I was going to say, like, I think we all have a story to tell, right? So I guess it depends how you tell this story. It depends how you tell your story. But personally, I'm really interested in people's stories. Have you heard of Humans of New York?
Yes.
Wow. Amazing, right? Yes. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So whenever I meet people, I always want to know their story. And sometimes, obviously, I have to be careful because I don't want to push any boundaries, especially with their privacy, etc. There's certain things that people don't want to discuss. But I always find that as a human being, I can always connect with people because of their stories. There's always something that I can latch onto, literally because of their story. Even strangers, for me, I love just speaking to random strangers because it's really easy for you to see the exterior and you don't know what's happening in the interior. And so often I'm seeing people, you know, at the gym, on the streets, and they're going through, or they have been through some real life stuff. And when I hear their stories, it motivates me to continue to live in my purpose and continue to live, to literally just do everything I want to do using all the skills and talents I have, because it also makes me aware that not everyone is able to do that. But I wouldn't be able to have that mentality had I not known people's stories. Yeah, so with you in your storytelling, are you a person that likes to hear other people's stories?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do love other people's stories. However, I find it so interesting with people like you who are hosts and like so outgoing all the time, because I'm a split like extrovert and introvert.
That's me.
So, oh, are you? Okay. So, you know, when you're in like your introvert way, like it's very, yeah, okay.
I don't want to talk, and people don't get it because, especially if you've met me when I'm having an extroverted moment, you expect me to be extroverted with you throughout my whole life. Mm-hmm. And Mel, 7 times out of 10, I don't want to be around people. I don't want to speak to you. But it's so funny because sometimes it really does depend, especially, you know, with like human connections. So when I go out, I'll put my headphones in. If I'm not driving, I'll have my headphones in, and that's the sign I don't want to speak to you. I don't want to be spoken to. And but sometimes, I don't know, I just feel in my soul that that human looks interesting. Like that human has a story. Like, and I see it through the eyes. I love reading people. I love feeling energy. And I'm like, there's something there and I want to know more. So it's either that person will approach me, or, and more, you know what, 9 times out of 10, like people will say, you know what, you're kind of like a witch, because people just open up with you. Like, Mel, honestly, people will just randomly start telling me their life stories. Just randomly, Mel, randomly, at the gym, in the shopping center,